Echa, Yuxatini, Tlingit Johan. Waydach Nak, Ақтú de Ḳutí Saak, Tatge. Helpasa Łuti, Yayaki Tlach with the Huetl, Stiyak. Jay Kukinkia, Ya Juya Jachatsi wa at. Helpasa Ḳutí Yai Kachwe Kukwaluk, Ақтú Yake, Wuchin, you Ḳutí Atk, Ya Yidat. Gulchish Hawe, Yashukwa. Yitu agesagu yuchiyatani, Chayayidat, Chadasa dat, Helwasaka Ḳutí. Aqayachana yi kakwashatu. Ya location ka direction adat. Ye oye khwaji. Yayidat kwa. Yitu agesagu yuchiyatani. Anybody want to say anything as we get started? Anything to share? Questions?
Yak today now would do the zaki.
Oh, okay. If you didn't catch it, I got my second shot.
Wasa do was
Dasa.
go ahead.
Oh, if you didn't catch, I got my second shot yesterday, so I'm all caught up on the vaccine, but knocked me out a little bit today, but I think I'm okay. So I just got real tired and kind of the chills, but then I'm fine though. Like last night I had a sore arm, but not like some people got like kind of flu-like symptoms. I don't think
There's a dick.
Oh.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, okay, cheesh. Yeah, so it's all right. Cheesh. Second one's harder than the first, but it's not bad. It was. Yeah, my arm's okay. Last night it kind of was pretty bad, but it was funny because I was kind of like had an ache just in my other shoulder. So I was like, yeah, let's do the other one then. So then they were both hurting. I was like, maybe I should have just stuck with one. But then I was kind of balanced, so it was okay. But yeah. Oh, who's got a kuch? What kind of filter? Did somebody find the cat filter? Kashtush ख़utí, the lawyer ख़utí. I gotta find a video so we could translate it into Tlingit. That'd be fun. Kashtush ख़utí. So that would be the negative. So you say something ख़utí, Kesh something ख़utí. So I'll tell you folks this story. We were in they were starting this watershed council. So there was this kind of movement, I want to say the early 2000s to start these watershed councils and collaboration with tribes. So a friend of mine was helping to coordinate these and invited me to a meeting in Tlingit. And so we're meeting with the elders and they're pretty fired up because they're having to go farther and farther to pick seaweed and dig clams. Just with the way the land was going. And I want to say who was one elder was talking, and then she started getting, it was like she was kind of just riling herself up, but good, because that's people's land and it's people's food. And then she gets, it's just going higher. And they had someone from Fish and Game there who was, your target, I think, if that's your job. But he was a good guy. I think he was there to just really be helpful, and was probably getting yelled at for the regulations that are being enforced by other folks, so kind of maybe comes with the territory. But then, at one point she's just like full on yelling. She said, and I was like, oh, that's how you say that. Okay, because this was quite a while back in my Tlingit learning phase, and so it was pretty fun. Yeah, so then it got real quiet, and so then I raised my hand, and my friend he was just looking at the floor, and he didn't look up, he nodded his head real fast, and so I spoke to her in Tlingit and thanked her for for speaking like that, because we were there to see like what were the needs of the community, and they had real needs. They had people doing the rafting tours and picking up people's nets to show the tourists, and that's real bad stuff. I was like, man, you don't mess with people's gear, you don't mess with people's food. And so just sort of coming down to some of those core values, and then being a community that's sort of, you get these folks just drifting in front of your right through your front porch kind of all summer long. So okay.
I was here. I was here around that time. I was part of the people dealing with that fish and game. And one of the guys here in the village, unfortunately he's not with us anymore. But you remember Stony?
Mm-hmm.
He ended up shooting right over the head of the fishing game guy, trying to take his net out of the water, and told him to don't screw with his net. And next time he's going to get him if he messes with the net again. And sure enough, they ended up coming to Cluckwan about 2 weeks later, and there was 30 of us packed inside the conference room with 3 of their fish and game. And they didn't come back after that. But it is, I know who you were talking about was talking like that. That's awesome you were there.
Yeah, that was fun. Okay, anybody else? Anything you want to share? Any thoughts, questions? Okay.
I have some. Oh,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
oh, I have some sentences that I didn't say last class.
Good sheesh. Let's hear them.
Okay. Cindy got to go. Aunt Alto would to a cook wish ach unkitim. Hun dakahidi. Ha uat. Skunde would to a cook wish to alto. Nilde would to a cook ka chota.
Okay, sheesh. Yeah, way. Anch qalsu. Yeah, okay, Hastu shkalniki, we aqo we shukwa an. Yukhaya hasbutla an. We anch qalsu. Ihki dakhaya kinde hasbusadak. Yeah, ya khoach. Yetlech ishke atbuhi hajawe nakide hasbusadak ak. Teach hini aya adachye hasuti. Ajawe tlinedi. Ya koa anch qaltu we yachte has ausatin. Yeowa has ayaus qa. Ya kaya hit klein gachileyech. Yachte hit ye gachisa. Ach sai aya we hit kach. Yeowa ach tuati. Tletline dich ikoch sati. Yachte tan awa. Yeowa chan hasakawanik. Gled chach enach. Is jay go genkach to wasagu in kachwaniki. Kewa hanach sati shkalniki. Yeah, so Anshkaltsu, that's where the Tlingit settled when they're going north. It's their story, so I'll just give a tiny summary. But some bad stuff happened, so they head north from Beam Canal area. They're from this place called Tlingit. There's a whole bunch of them. There's one right by the VTRC and Twin Lakes Park that's called Tlingit. If you ever go by it, it's a lot of times it'll contract to Tlingit, which is a dog salmon river. And so that's in it. Then that further you get teach, heen, ut, e, and you get Tlingit. And they came north. They also settled a group in Angoon. But a lot of times when the clan moves like that, they end up taking on a new name at some point. And at Untitled, they shared this story at a UAS event. And then it was there that they saw Ţ, the Big Dipper, and this being came out of the Big Dipper and talked to them and said, y'all are going to build a big house here, and you're going to put my name on it, Ţ, hit, and you won't be Tlingit, you'll be Tan. And so that's what they call themselves now. And it's really interesting to sort of, it's like a never-ending puzzle trying to figure out how all the clans came to be and how they're related, and it's important stuff. We just had a conversation because I look in the Downhour stuff a lot, and some stuff like people didn't know, like when everybody had to leave this island called Kuyu, when they had to leave that island, because of two things probably. One was they were told by an Icht not to get salmon out of the river, and some people did, and then a whole bunch of people, and like everything died off from one part of the island. Ḳutí told me, he told his dad he was going hunting on Kuyu, and his dad's like, oh, where? And he told him, he's like, well, tell me how that goes. Oh, now. Guess is the connection pretty bad?
Intermittently, you'll freeze.
Okay. Hey, Sean. Yeah, I had to like kind of reboot everything, and so I think we're just having connection issues today.
I thought it was just a side effect.
Yeah, right. That second shot's a real doozy. Now I'm getting hot, so I don't know what to do.
Just your spidey sense is about to kick in soon.
Right. Okay. And yeah, so anyways, a lot of fun stuff happens at these places, and they get these names. So and we'll look at that place name a little later on Ţ, and sort of see there's two main parts, right? So there's a noun in there, and then there's a verb, and we'll be able to find it. And so I'll show you how to, and then spotting them in place names is a little trickier because everything gets kind of smushed together. Okay, anybody else? Thoughts? Sentences to share? Questions?
I have a sentence.
Okay.
I might have been a little confused on the assignment, but whatever. If we were supposed to write it in past tense, I didn't do that. Kuake yaki kunak kusiat kudakake tlake chak crest de actuati ak yena nak sha yadak ke naat gwash segan huchwe.
Okay. Sheesh. Yeah, Ţ, Ḳutí. Gwell Cwnachawi. Cell cws art. Ya, just see you dark wustan. Llyn cw. Cwdach cell ushke. Cell cwshke aya, just see you. Awe cwsi art. Cwdach cwsi art. Wan qanins, we cw de tuasagu. Ya, haskaw zaqach aya we Ḳutí a dart. Ya wan qanins. Qanachwe qwsi art a qoa. Ach tu yuk we Ḳutchaya na ha chosatin tat yin qawe dis. Sheesh, das hat sie.
Ach, jo skallnik a. Ak tak. Sit ak. Chachan. Anach ya andagan yek de ya nachgut. Asach ik gagan chwasatin. Chas hinik kuchwatin. Akach kul dasegt at gunalchish.
Ukecha. Sheesh. Really good use of suffixes onto the place names. Like that's really good practice. With the ah, I would probably recommend putting cut like right after it because you're standing on the lake, right? So that it becomes just a little bit of extra information. Because if you were at a lake, then sometimes you would pick like the lake shore or on the lake or near the lake. But you know, it also works to just sort of be at the place. The ones that end with ye, like you could put the suffix right on there. So you could say yede, or you could say yenach, or yedach, or yeich. So it's pretty fun, and we'll look at sort of how that ye works when you see it on a bunch of place names. And there's two things that it can generally do: the place where some verb happened, or the way that some verb happened. And then you'll find that you can also use it for like the place, we're gonna go to the place where we will pick berries. And that gets pretty advanced, but you'll see like a bunch of stuff can just attach to that yay. And then if you copy stuff from the Carey Edwards dictionary, just watch for the underline K and the underline X. When you paste them, they will change. And so it'll become like a Y with a mark over it or an N with a squiggle over it. So just keep an eye on that.
I had a question. Was the Gagan Kwasatin, was that a present tense, seeing the sun, or was that past tense?
I was trying to experiment with sort of imperfective. Yeah, so is that right, Rene?
Yeah.
I'm seeing the sun.
Yeah, so that's a verb that does not change between the present tense and the past tense. So
Okay,
like I could say Ďsatín, but it's like the logic is they're called event verbs, which means there's only time before it happens and then time after it happens. And so in order to see something specific in the Tlingit brain, it must have already happened. So that's some things where like the time bit gets, and again, we just go back to this idea, Tlingit conjugates for event. You can certainly talk about time, but it tends to focus more about whether or not the things has happened.
Yeah, I just wanted to use it for my own use.
Yeah, and so Ḳatín would be I see a non-specific thing, like I see a dog, or I see a killer whale, I see a tree. But if it's a specific one, then it switches to Ḳuesatín. So we see that S classifier switch, which is saying this is a specific thing. Okay, good question. Anyone else? Anything to share? Questions? Okay. So I thought we'll see how the internet connection holds up. Just let me know if I freeze. I thought we'd just take another look at direction, location, and how suffixes get attached to some things and how they start changing. Certain things will change when you put a suffix on them. And then maybe we'll look at a story after the break. It's called Yéil just because fish and game, fish and game pops up in the story. So we'll see how I do. as far as my freezing goes. Maybe if I share my screen, I won't freeze as much. I hope not. Okay, where'd it go?
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
Did you ever notice when you were learning that one day when you're listening to somebody talk and Tlingit, it's making a lot more sense? Like maybe a week before it was you were having some troubles and all of a sudden the whole thing someone's saying in Tlingit makes complete sense. It just kind of just comes, it just happens.
Yeah, for me, I was kind of surprised at how sudden it was, because it was like I had to work really hard to understand things, and I would get lost, and all of a sudden someone would say something, and even if I couldn't respond fully and clink it to what they were saying, I was kind of surprised. I'd be like, oh yeah, I know what they said, you know, and so that is a part, like those pieces do start to come together, and it's sort of like when you start moving from sort of like you're not a beginner anymore, you are an intermediate, then you're moving towards advanced. Sometimes it just goes in these chunks. Does someone else have a question?
No, I think somebody's news or some TV or something is.
Oh, okay. Okay. But yeah, so like understanding Tlingit, it is pretty fun, like the way it kind of sometimes comes in chunks like that. Okay. So we're gonna just kind of move through this list, and these lists are also in Ḥawsale Ḥayuqatangi. And sometimes you just got to sort of look at these lists and keep memorizing these things, but also go back to the place names where you'll find them, and then to try and use them in your speech. Like, so maybe we'll just keep talking about going places, seeing things. I think that's a pretty fun sort of thing to use. So going through these, like, so we've done this before. So dock is out to sea, or out into the open, or falling from the sky. So dock uakut would be like going from in the forest out into a clearing. Dock is the opposite of dock. So dock would also be going out to sea. And then there's two other ones. So dock is straightforward from your perspective, sticking your tongue out, putting any body part straight ahead of you. That's going dock. So if you sing the hokey pokey, you say, oh, and anchkashtsu, you hear the verb root in the end of that, su. So you say, daki hlitsu yijin, kochi hlitsu yijin, daki hlitsu yijin, yilechwa yijin, Tlingit yach anatlech yu ayach yinak, yenakati. So like the parts of that song, Dak Yilitsu, stick it straight out in front of you. And su, the verb root means to move some stick-like objects. So you got sticks, your tongue is a stick, they're stick-like anyways. I'm not trying to criticize anybody's body type. I'm just saying, like, that's how Tlingit looks at, limbs. And then you'd say yijin, and you could change it and put any body part there you want. If you're working with the kids, they want yituk every time. They'll just yell it. They like to put their butt around. So then if something's out here, like let's say there's a little creature crawling up your arm towards your body, that's dak. So that would be going this way. And then to go behind you, that's kuch. So kuch means to return, but it also means behind. So, especially in the pre and post COVID worlds, different cultures have different ideas of standing in line. Sometimes people will be just like, you ever be in line and someone's just kind of right on your neck? It's like kind of breathing on your neck, So if someone's too close, you could say, and that just means take a step back. So kuch is backwards, and then dahan is stand. So you're just saying stand back. Oh, that could be like a Stevie Nicks could say that, right? I don't know how I should sing it. Isn't she like a stand back, something? So you got dak, yishitsu, yijin, puch, yishitsu, yijin. Then you do it again. Then you say yishechwash. So that means to shake something, right? There's several different ways to shake things, but if you're going to just sort of shake your hand like that, that would be shechwash is the command form for it. And then you say Tlingit yach anayech. You all dance like Tlingit people. So that'd be Tlingit dancing. Then you say you ah yach. Turn around. Yinak. So you ayach and then yinak is you all stand. So you ayach yinak would be everybody turn around, but still you're remaining standing. So it's very interesting the way the directions work, and then hokey pokey we can learn a lot from it. And then you say ye nakati, let it be that way, and you go wee. So now you can hokey pokey all you want. So there's dak and dak. So this is also up in the woods. So yeah, you could say dakde wugut, and that's a saying that you could say when somebody passes away. And that's where into the woods comes from, that sort of phrase. I know some people were critiquing it, but people a long time ago used to say that. It's just how you interpret it. You don't literally usually don't say askatuyikde. That's more like literally like going into the forest. I've heard it dakde, and then you could also say hanakhugut. They left us behind. So this one's usually inland, like just away from the ocean. But it also could be if there's a deer in the clearing, and you're hunting, and then you're gonna take your shot, but then it runs into the woods. You could say, "Dakhuagut." It went into the forest. It's back into it's also in the shadows. Dak also works for bringing something out of a box, like when you're gonna bring your regalia out, your at'u out. You could say, Ďakachtuti awahai. We're going to bring our things out. Then deki, that's way out to sea. So that's out there really far. So dak is like pushing out from the shore, going seaward. And then deki is way out there. Dekinde is upwards. And dayinde is downwards. So this K and Y going up and down, you're going to see all over the place. Right? So you can see K in front of a verb or Yé in front of a verb. You're going to see diki, deyi, kinde, yinde. So that K sound is upwards, that Y sound is downwards. Christine, you got a question? You're on mute. No? Okay. So gone is outside. From the inside, I should have put these in different order. So if you're inside, then gone is outside, right? And then, let me move these ones around. So this one, neich and yi, neich, so there's two of them. One is a noun. So you could say like, ach neichi, my home, right? You could say, oh, the porcupine's home, wherever it lives. So neich could be a home, but there's another one that usually goes in front of verbs, and this one talks about going into a building. The one you choose depends on where you are. If you are neich inside the building, then you say neich. Neichge, because you're already in the building. If you're outside of the building, you would say yi. Okay? Hitigu, go in the house. So those are ones where there's a bit of a logic to it. And the other one that we're going to see is the beach. So which one you use depends on where you are. That's
Something that I've always kind of been thinking about is that we have that word "nate" for like a home or house, and we always refer to our clan houses here as hit. What was 100 years ago? What was the difference between those two? Like a smokehouse, the difference between a hit, is that what it was?
well, a hit is a building. That's
Right.
all hit is. It's just a building. It could be
Right.
anything, right? So it could be a bank. It could be any kind of building is hit. Neish is specifically home, right? So home sweet home, that's where I live. That's, so like you could stay somewhere and it's not really your home. Like there's all kinds of situations that could call for that.
Oh.
But back then, like if we go way back, most people are in Nakahiti. So they're all living together. So you've got Na, the nation, Ka,
Mhm.
on, Hit, so the house on the nation. So that's how you refer to like Hanakahiti awe, Ishkahit. So our clan house is the Ishkahit. But
Mhm.
then like Neish probably gains a lot more use as people started living in their own homes. And then that would be like, yeah, that's a building, but that's my house, right? That's my home. So even in English, those are different terms, right? There's a difference between a house and a home. So that's how that kind of works.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense because I was trying to put Nath into something 100 years ago compared to what we use it like. I noticed lately, but now that you put it that way, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. But and it could move. So like Anchqashsu refers to a temporary village, right? So like what people used to do is that have the big clan house and then they would take the boards off the side and then they would go build their summer fish camps with those, but that would be Naish. That's our home now. And then we go back to the clan house in the winter. So it can also, it doesn't refer to one specific place. But so you got Hit, Naish, Nakahiti. So Nakahiti means the house on the tribe or the nation. And that's how you refer to a clan house. But then you have Daka, Hit. So Daka means around the outside of it. So Dakahiti would mean the house around something. So Dana Dakahiti is the bank, house around the money. Giwa Dakahiti is the bar, the house around the beer. Uh, and then there's Agach Dakahiti, the house around prayer. So then you could name all kinds of stuff. If there's some new building, you could talk about what it does. Yakshayech Dakahiti, or maybe you say Yakututlayech Dakahiti, the place where boats are built, if there was a boat manufacturing kind of building. So, okay. So these ones are kind of large concepts, like universal directions. And then they do relate sometimes to the body. And they also relate to the land. Often the ocean gets kind of pulled up into it. So we also have Ichki and Na-ki. And I think we're doing this one a little bit the other day. So Ichki is downstream or south. Sometimes it's referring to the lower 48. And it's also where the water goes when you flush the toilet or when it goes down the drain. That goes Ichki. And so I didn't know that one until about a year ago. And we're like, how do you say flush the toilet? Ichki nash'us. So wash it downstream is really literally what it means.
You say toilet.
Kwas.
Oh, I thought there might have been a little more complicated way people might be saying it today that gives like the function, but it still can.
Yeah, and so that's a name where it just sort of transfers over, and that's not always how it works. Because a quest used to be a box by the door, like way long time ago, it was a box by the front door. And if you're like a high caste person, you got to pee in the box, so you could just go pee in the box and have to go outside. If you were kind of a low level person, be like take it outside with your dirty pee, right? So that's just how people thought. And then that urine would sometimes age and they would use it for dyeing and medicines and a whole bunch of stuff. People would wash their hair in it sometimes with other things. So um, there's lots of uses for urine. But nowadays we just kind of flush it down the toilet. And so the quest just sort of transferred over, and then quest iti is now the name for the bathroom. So iti is the remains of it usually, but itika is a room. So like on the remains of it. So when we start naming sort of parts of the house, and maybe next Thursday we'll look at some language in the home. We'll start thinking about like language in the home. there's a group of us, we've been working on a book about like how to bring language into every room of the house, you know. But yeah, the quest is the toilet. So then, but it more is downstream and upstream, but it also will work for north and south. Like if there's two islands and one's on the north side, one's on the south side, one might be called Ixki and then the other one Naki, and then whatever the name is. So I think we talked about this the other day. Naki kit ak, Ixki kit ak. So you have the northern killer whale lagoon and the southern killer whale lagoon. So the other one that sort of changes depending on where you are is the beach. And this isn't any beach around a river or a lake. This is the ocean. This is the shore of the ocean only. So if you're on it, that's niche. Only if you're on the, or if you're talking about something being on the beach. Niche. Yéil. There's a whole bunch of stories that start like that. Raven was walking on the beach. There are a bunch of names and stuff that have to do with being on the beach that are not very polite. So if you said Nichka Yedi or Nichka Kawu, those are big insults in Tlingit. Just so you know, one time I was teaching and someone's like, why are you teaching us this? I was like, well, you know, I don't know. Just every language has its parts, right? And some of those parts are not nice. So Nichka Yedi was usually the term for a child whose parents were of the same clan. And so it's like you're a child on the beach. Nichka Kawu was a person who kind of got kicked out of their clan and was a person on the beach. So both of those are probably the literal equivalent of like a bastard. And so like that's a pretty close sort of correlation. So just be careful, just because, and I say that because someone was trying to come up with a name like, hey, would this be like Child of the Beach? I want to name something this. I was like, that's, no, because people are gonna, you know, but it's, and then there's Nichkatei, which is a rock on the beach. And that, I haven't fully figured that one out yet. But then there's this other phrase like chanich. So chanich or chanich, you could put that X after. And that means you put it right before a verb. And it means in vain or for nothing. So let's say I spent all day building this shed and I'm not a good carpenter. This would be a true probably story. So I built this shed. Then I got done, the sun set, and I looked at it, and it just like fell over. So I'd be like, I just tried all for nothing to build this thing. And it's interesting, right? Because we're people of the ocean, but there's just something about that niche term that pops up in some places like that. But niche ka'adi, that's not a bad thing. That just means like clams and things that live on the beach. So if you're up on the land away from the ocean, then it's called either ek or ik. But usually only if you're using these in directionals, right? So if you're going to say, even if you're upland, you're in your house, which is 100 yards up from the ocean, and you look down there and you say, oh, there's a mink on the beach, you would still use niche because you're talking about where that thing is and it's already there. You would really just use these ones if you're talking about let's go down there, or you know, it's a directional term from the land down to the beach. If you're out in the water, then you would call the beach yun, which means the shore. So there's a few of these, right? So it just kind of depends on where you're at. Where it's sort of like which one do you use depends on where you're at. And so the ocean is a big part of the Tlingit consciousness, right? Because it's stuff so much so that yun is also built into verbs. So you could think of it like you're paddling for a long time and then you finally make it to the shore. So yun right in front of a verb would mean to completion. So you could say like yun khwacha, I'm done eating. Yun ye jechwane, I finished working on it. So you could say yechechwane would be I worked. Or let's say adat. Adat yechechwane. I worked on it. Adat yan yechechwane. I finished working on it. That means whatever it was, it's done. That's a
An interesting yan huacha, meaning that you just ate something, right?
yeah. So like yan huacha would be I'm done eating. Huacha would be I ate. Yach huasacha would be I ate all of it.
But you wouldn't say yan huata.
You could, that would mean like I've finished sleeping.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, there are some where it might not fully make sense. I guess like, you know, someone's like, well, let's say you got up at like 3 a.m. and you couldn't go back to sleep, and then someone was talking, and you might say, maybe I'm done sleeping, but then you can be tired later, right? Okay. So just keep an eye as well on the tone. Look at those vowels, right? Just try not to shorten them. Sometimes they get shortened. Gan stays nice and long. Yun is high and short. But these ones, you're going to start using these a lot. And these are how you go, you know, like for those Tlingit driving directions. It would be interesting because let's say we're driving, we drive across the bridge to Douglas and we take a left. Now taking a left would be iqde, and then taking a right would be daqde. So, you know, you could use those, right? Those would probably even be preferred as opposed to you could take a left, take a right. But those would be the long time ago, the directions, right? Ha, daqde nachtu'at. Let's go further up, right? So you could be going up a mountain. You could be, you know, you're talking about going farther away from the ocean. Okay. So these ones, they've got this long dash in front of it because it needs a noun to belong to. So you could say akhda, about me. Ida, about you. Hastuda, about them. Kushtada, about a landdaughter. So this da, and then, you know, I like to call these bases because they can take a suffix. So you could say da de, da dach, dach, and it depends on, you know, not just being around it, but going to be around it, going away from being around it, running around like some kind of squirrel just running around the house or something. Then we see daka around the outside of it. Ge is opposed, and this one with the little squiggle, that means it likes to have a suffix on there. It doesn't like to be by itself. So you usually see gate. So you could say, if you said ach gate, it depends on the verb that comes up next. So ach gate, you could be arguing with me. If you said to gate, then you're definitely like, we're having an argument, like you think differently than I do. But you could also say, wushgetas wudaat. They met each other. They, you know, literally they walked against each other. It could mean like leaning against something in some cases. Just generally, if you said a gate against it, people will think about breaking the rules, doing something wrong, doing something illegal. So like if you say a gate would a git, that kind of just literally means like they did it against it. But I would say, oh, somebody broke the law or somebody snuck around with someone. And so those are, so like against it, it could also mean sort of doing something wrong, just generally. G, you don't see this on its own a whole lot, but you will see it in, that's where askutu, it's g is built in there. The base of something. This one is like k. I would hear that one, I think, more than g. But k would be like the trunk of a tree, the bottom of a hill, the base of your spine, you know. Qe is within the folds of something. So this is there's a noun on its own, which is a bay, but this qay could mean in between, like qanakhan qay is a word for yard. It means between the fence. Ite is the place where something used to be. And so we've seen quite a few of these. Gun ite, where the fire was. Khus ite, where feet were. So those are footprints or tracks, like quwqan khus ite. Yeah, Qaisa'an is a beautiful bay. Or beautiful. No, that one is beautiful land, I think. And so I'll have to look at how that one works. But there's a verb root, qay, which means beautiful, like shaqshaqay, kashaqay, ahtawuqshaqay. But this one is a little bit different than that one. But there, oh yeah, so Qaisan, that's it. Yeah, so the land at the bay. That's what I was thinking of. Qaisan is up in Gaysan, and then Qaisa'an is the name for Kasan. I got it mixed up. Sit eat is sit eat qay is the name for Glacier Bay. So it's the bay where the glacier used to be. So ite can also be used for like it's not there anymore. Ha is our. Ite qaku, our descendants, the people in the place where we used to be. So that's how you talk about like sort of our future generations. This could also be used like, let's say I got my second vaccination and it was worse than it was, then maybe someone would come substitute teach and they'll say, I'm standing in the place of khune. And that just means like I'm the substitute. I'm here. That's what you would use. Like let's say your uncle is the speaker for your clan and you end up speaking for them. So you'd say, Akhkak itikhahan. That's just, and that instantly explains what's going on. Like he couldn't make it, so I'm here to do the job. Yeah, zisk iti aya. So you could say also, if you saw some place, let's say you're hunting, and you saw a place where a moose had been resting, so you could zisk iti. Do you see its tracks? So now we're gonna track it, right? Another one is G. So this one, it's for a whole bunch of stuff, and it means possession, sometimes hands, but usually just generally possession. So this is where Jiwu comes from. Ji, Ji-day, Ji-yes, whole bunch of stuff that uses this. So it has to do with like having something, losing something too. Like there was a time we recorded Nora and she said, it started drifting out of our hands. And so there's jinak or jinach, you know, so like there's different ways that this can be used. And it sometimes has to do with like you have something and then maybe you don't have it. But the things to keep in mind is like we've learned jiwu. So jiwu is I have. Like somebody tell me how to say I have money.
Dana achchiwo.
Yep. Dana achjiwu. What about I had money?
Dana achji.
You could say that, yeah. So that's saying I don't have money. So now maybe, you know, this is my long argument on why I can't chip in for dinner. So, like, if you want to move that into any sort of, yeah, now you're going to start applying time, past, present. Now you have to change it to a verb. Jiwu is not a verb. Like in English, it's a verb. I have, I had, I will have. It's a verb. And it also works for a whole bunch of things. Like I have kids, I have a car, and some of those work for Tlingit, but like usually you don't, the kids aren't in your possession, really. You just say Dachnachawe achyetki. That's how you say, like, I have 2 kids. You don't have to say, you just say, my kids are 2. That's kind of all you say. And there's other ways to say it, but that's how, or you say, dachnachye achyetki. You can say it that way too. But the yati verb, to be somewhere, dana achji yewuti. I had money. You could also say dana achji yewutiyin, and that in at the end means not anymore. So now these are my nice long sentences on like why I'm sitting here not chipping in for the pizza. Oh, dana achji yewutiyin talk yidat kotet achji. And so dana achji de kakwati. I got some money coming. So yeah, I'll pay for the next one, right? So let's see. Gande iti. Yeah, so this one, iti. So you can also take nach on there. And now you get kind of a special meaning. And especially if you say yati. Literally, it's like through the place where that thing used to be. Through the remains of it. And that's how you say I need it. So sometimes it's fun to just sort of look at the logic in the language. G is something, you're just going to see it all over the place. Like, especially once you analyze speeches and stories, you'll just see how this is used in Tlingit.
So the way I just said it right there is not exactly saying I need to use the bathroom. I know I was using Gande like using the bathroom instead of Quas.
Yeah, so usually so when we go back to Gon, this is a fun one. This one that Dave Katzig used to talk about. There's this really slight difference, and they probably used to be, you know, like if we're all staying in a cabin, and I said, I'm gonna step outside for a second, and that the way I said it is saying like, I'm gonna go use the bathroom. Don't come out there, maybe, right? So if you keep this long, gande kakwagut, right? So we'll just put it in here. So that's how you'd say, I'm going outside. But if you say, no, it was Herman Davis who was saying this. But if you make this short, oops, I got to put the day on there. So this one is, I'm going outside. Gande kakwagut. Keep that vowel long. If it goes short, gande kakwagut, that usually means I'm going to go poop. It's a euphemism. It's a sort of it's a way, you know, this English has it too, right? Like I'm going to drop the kids off at the pool or however people, you know, say things like that. So then if you keep this short and you say ach tuwati, which is a very similar thing to ach tuwasaku, right? There's not a lot of difference between those two phrases, just 2 different ways to say the same thing. Ach tuwati is I want, and ach tuwasagu is also I want or I like. Gande ach tuwati. That's how you say, I need to use the bathroom. It's a very polite way to say it. You can go further. You say like, I'm going to get overpowered, but you know, we'll just start with this. But they are probably related, going outside and going to the bathroom.
Matters where you sleep in the house.
What's that?
Matters where you sleep in the hitty.
Yeah, yes. A long time ago, the quest was inside, but there ain't no number 2 in the quest. You take all that outside. Everybody, high caste, low caste, everybody. And so the other thing is sort of just to keep going with this poopy thread. So we've got Gande, and then we've got Gunde. And so when we look at these, and we're going to put Kukwagut, so we'll say this. So I am going to go outside, and then I am going to go poop. And, you know, and so the funny thing was like someone was just sort of giving a speech at a ceremonial event, and they said Gande instead of Gande, and everybody was laughing because they're like, TMI, you know. But then there's a nice way to say, sort of like the word poop, right? So English, there's like these different stages, right? So all the way up to 4-letter words and different ways you could talk about. Um, it just kind of depends. If you go step in it, you might have a different way to say it than just sort of like don't step in it. So Gunde Nagudi is a very polite way to say. So that would be sort of my equivalent for that word. So Gunde Nagudi. So when you read that story about the woman who got taken by the bears because she offended them, that's a Gunde Nagudi. She stepped in the poop. You can also say hot, and that's getting a little more towards like maybe it's this equivalent. But in Tlingit, like it really means a mess. So like Ḳayes is rust. And so it just means like some mess left over from the iron. It doesn't, you could probably, if I told my kids that, they would laugh and say, iron poop, And then there's this, which comes from the verb, and this would be like, we'll put a little asterisk there. So this is getting pretty literal, right? And so there's different ways you could say this stuff. And the only reason I would bring any of this stuff up is if you raise kids in a language, sometimes you gotta, or I guess I'll, before we take a break, I was using a code. People can look at this recording. Oh my goodness. So George Davis told me a story, and he would just really laugh about this. He said he had a neighbor who lived across the street, had a really big dog, very big, and is a really old man. And and the old man like didn't speak very much English. He just spoke Tlingit. And so some of those old timers, like, they'd have a real hard time with certain words, right? Like he named his dog Dempsey for some reason, because he couldn't say it. He said Deusi, Deusi. And he'd take his dog on a walk, but he'd get real impatient. So he'd say, Achish, Deusi, Achish. And that's a pretty literal way of just saying go poop, right? So there's, so when I got my puppy, like, so I take her outside, and that was my sort of command for getting her to use, because, training a dog, like, okay, dog just peed, we gotta do the other thing, or else I'm gonna go find a present in an hour, So there you go. Sorry for the poopy discussion, but one thought leads to another, I guess.
You really broke it down good. Sheesh.
Sheesh. Say the same thing to mine, but I'm gonna say it sheesh, because I'm always like gonna go, like hurry up, it's cold.
Yeah, and so this is the verb form. So you also have this letter A in front of it, which is, we're going to look at that thing. But when this letter A pops up in front of a verb, it tends to really put action it puts the focus on the action, right? And so, like, it's really interesting because, like, outlet saw, so you hear that A at the front, that's, they burped. Outzakuk, they coughed. Our shit, they pooped. Our shuk, they peed. Or our shuk. I always get those mixed up. And so a lot of body functions, our would be they farted. So what's interesting is they all have this letter A attached to them. They sneezed. And so do a few other verbs. Audagan, awatleich, awasteich, awatloon. And so in some of those, that letter A so like atloon is hunting. But if you're going to hunt some certain thing, then that A kind of drops out and turns into a third person object. So you'd say, Zisk chatloon, I'm hunting. Or I guess Elmer Fudd would say, Kach chatloon, I'm hunting rabbits. Okay, fun. Someone sent me a message, says we really flushed it out. So I guess take your break. Maybe I've done enough for now. Let's come back in 10. We could keep going on this. We could look at suffixes, or we could look at that story. I'll let you guys take your pick. See you in 10 minutes. I lost track of time. It's been 10 minutes. Take. Okay, what do you guys want to do next? I know this stuff can be a little dry, but it's important to sort of build this kind of vocabulary. But I know you can't do 2 straight hours of this stuff, so you want to do more of this? Shkashnik? Okay. So let me find the audio for this one. We can listen to it and read it at the same time. It'll be fun. Let's see. So this is Charlie Joseph.
Is there any relation to Charlie Joseph to the young man that was here on the last class?
I don't know. Who was that?
Tagaban. Because they both being from the same house of box house of Sitka.
Yeah, so I don't know about sort of what their lineal relation is, but yeah, they are the same clan. And so, yeah, and then his Charlie Joseph, his daughter is Dastaya Ethel-Mekanen. Charlie Joseph recorded quite a few stories. He was one of the primary speech makers at the Sea-Alaska Elders Gathering right before the first celebration. He had a really intense back and forth, just as far as intense in terms of the depth of knowledge and language use that they went to. He and Kitchnach, George Davis, which is a different George Davis than the one that I worked with. He was from Angoon. And then he also composed a lot of the lullabies that are used today. So a lot of folks sort of use those lullabies for teaching. He lived in Sitka, really instrumental in the things that they were doing with their language program. So let's see. So this is a story. It hasn't. This text hasn't come out yet, but I'll put this particular story up so you folks can take a look at it. So what I'll do is I'll start playing the recording. We'll see. It might be kind of loud. I don't know. I haven't listened to it in a long time. And then we'll read along and try and split your time, I guess, between the Tlingit and the English. So, or maybe just look at the Tlingit, because we'll come back through it and look at the English. Really consider the pace that he goes at, listen to the tone, listen to the cadence of the language. Master speaker, master storyteller. This story is called Yéil Saak.
Yéil in Katakani. Siyaha Shakuna, the Yuko Yaha, Siyak at Yukunik at the Yuko Zikitia, the Kadi Waxin Katatuati. Yatiana. Yakamacho. Ayukatumiknut. Ḳutí ayu. Anaktakia Asia. Ayu. Yéil Ţúti Kawak. Yéil Saak. Kayaka Ainen. Ţúti Kawak. Ţúti Wukis. Because Yéil that we should wildlife had to yet a shakun sitea sitiata yes Catholic. You are not that at the age here. Are you you call تخاف أخذتي شيئتين يس آيش تاج كتلي ياتا يتاقوتو أيا أكميك أيا يتودتان سكي أتستقصها أيا أتستودها يجيك يا أنك طاقت يا إيتي ودخسك شاوست وساك إتأخذ قد يدنا عتي وتيخ آلية خويته تتسيك حسانة بصافك تكد أنا وكايا وستي وياك وساك ها يا خندكوت قد وجق أستيك لك يا جاوة يكون يا فيش الوالله يا خناصة يا خات يا قياقة نخا أتسوى يا قياقة دخ أخي نخ أتسوى أتوقع نسقيد ويا يوسقا ويتك هيدا شنيتان تقيس التسك أقوى هيدا شودوتان أن قويود كاو أو ساك خيخ دوا خود تقيس أو تسك كأتوج وكأشو ديئو يا صدق يختاك النوق تلشات خكوتي يخوش كتو تكوت كتا سوا قيو أخ قيو أيو تاسك شقيو خدوتي يختش خدسكو قوات أشكتليك أخمانا خشكو فيك أتأتلش إنتك خدستيش كيالي تد يهيل قيوت أو وافج الولد أخسا وخير أخسا تلشخات يهيته أو وأدسه والنخطاقة إيجا يا قواتك إيكت النخطاقة قوية صدق قاوة وقيوة قشت وقنانا خلصك تشيفت كيش كثيقاتي يتيه تاقواسيا شكوك كينا إنا يا إذن خنش كوفي سيات أويا الله سكا كيبو إنش أوهي يخيارا كيفيكوكو أوه تلتوا اسكو يسخوا أقايا ياتا أتكوها وان يسوج اشتريت تشيت يا قايا ودي أختاك النوكو إيش كودك كي قيوك خشات يودا دقا يودا ستكية يودا سنداسة تكتأوه كي قيوك خشات وانا لي سوى كي تاو دوايك النختاق يا دكتور وقي وخن فتكيد ويدا شكوجي فيك يا تقتي ويدا شكوجي فيك يسكت خيك هنسك بأسخخ وقي وجنات القوية عندك شكرا لنت الجوة أكاوتك يفش الولد قيوه هذا ستك صدق كوخد يخص أختاقنا كوخا يخوة أقاوة أتخنا كودوة يجأقوة وكسان أخود أي قياد أو شقه وساك يا قشور خيك أتسقى إخوة أخيار يا خيجة إيه أتقو يا خير دايو قيتنك يتقسك تايو دو سيئة أيا يتاقو تويتي يتجا تنا يجت يتأي هديك كاوتي يأوسني يتنا أول كاية يا أويو خانسكسنك تقسك تا كيف أتقو خسوكي خين يختووت كيف أدو خواجو دكي خينك تلكي خوا أسيقا ويود وساد سايه يكسان إقيات يساق يسقوخ تخسك ينديا كايوة كالدو قوت قاوة خاخونيش وقوت خاخونيش قوت دوا سيقا تنجاغا وتتيه تقويش سيقايه وسيقايه خا أتشتكت يكسان تلوشات هيج قد خاشوا وخيش كختقت قاشوا دقت كوت خيك أتأيك وتساهوج وتسيك أكوشوش هوج أكقس إيه أتك خطيه أكاتيه يأخسني هسيس كاكتخا تسلخدتين تكت يا كيس خدو سوى دكو يا سميكي يا أبا أنا سكوت ودقسك شوى وجيت كوتك شوس وتقسك تا أيني زايه يا تخوختك خوسيات تقسك تايني زايه هتخوى يا تشاتكون أسخة يا والدة شوف فتوان يا تأشكالك يا فادة يجي خياتك
Łukadzie, or
Thoughts, questions, things you want to look at?
yeah. Something about that that really struck me is the level of like we had talked about before, things to say before you go on to what you're going to say next. And I've never seen the level of ho like I seen here today, or ha. And I hear it in different ways, but I never thought of it as well. And not only that, when they did this, they referred to everything translated except for the names. And it reminds me of back in the day being a kid and saying, what's that name mean? They say, it's an old name. We're not too sure. However, the words they understood were there. So there's some just curiosities in regards to, and other things I noticed on there is like further up into the story, he had mentioned toward the beginning, right up here. Oh, gee, I think it had something to do with the group of people, the way he said it. No. Oh, there it is. Shayadihain. And I always think of that Shaya, you know, that I say Shahayadi.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that one's in a song. Shayet Dehain on its own. Anybody know what that means, just kind of on its own?
A lot?
Child of the mountains?
Yeah, many, many. And
How does that work?
well, usually there's things with heads. And so
Oh.
the verb root is ha, which is there's a few different ha verb roots. This one is for a bunch of things to move together. This is the same verb root you use for digging or gardening. So ach kachwaha, I dug it up maybe, or I dug there, or I gardened there, because you're moving these clumps of dirt, and in Tlingit, like it's all a mass that moves together. So this one is shiyadehin is how you often hear it. But once you move it out of this form with the N that closes it, you would get shayaudaha. It came to be many. So you could say, if we're talking about a particular time when we became many, ha shayaudaha wega. We became many people at that time. Like, say it's some clan story, we went and settled somewhere, and then we just became a big group. Or you could say shaguchdaha, it will become many. But usually you hear it as shayadehin. So this usually means lots, but it should, and I hear it used for things without heads. Like it does seem to be somewhat interchangeable, but a lot of the elders we were working with said they preferred this one when you're talking about like people or animals, or shiyadehin quwakan, lots of deer. But if it's a thing without a head, like lots of rocks or lots of whatever, you would usually use atlein. So atlein, this one is a verb. Atlein is not a verb, but they could both mean many. So here you'd say duhuahu putziti. His gang existed. Huahu means like your crew, your gang. This is the one they use at Ḳutí. So they say, Kuch, duchayide duchakutin. And then they bring you the bowl of fruit and everyone go crazy. So duchayide, to go under his. So we see all these little parts that we've been using. Qa is a mouth, yi is below, de is towards. So chayide is a way to say like, put it in front of their mouth. It's a short form of saying that. Chayide duchakutin, with their gang. Right? So you got a gang of people around you and they all start pounding the table. So fun. I can't wait till we can all eat together again. I mean, I have to send you some digital fruit or something. Like Pac-Man cherries or something. Okay, good.
So I got one other question in regards to that Shiyadihain. Is it the ain at the end have anything to do with like K kana ain, like always growing? The ain here as the many people?
Yes. So when you have a verb, so open roots, right? So an open root means there's no consonant at the end. So sometimes we're going to say open and close. Like, and this is really important for languages. Like you might notice some languages, they don't like to have closed words. Like Hawaiian does not like to have closed words. So they'll put a on something. If your name is Bill, they'll call you Pila, because it can't just end with ul. It's gotta end with it's gotta have a vowel ending. Tlingit, it doesn't matter. It could have a vowel or a consonant ending. But if you close a vowel, so if you close something that ended with AA, so we saw this verb too for the fish to run. For the fish to run would be yawa'a. They ran, like a school of fish. Like, that's a really important verb. Like we watch for those, when those hooligan run, you let the first run go, and you need to be able to talk about that stuff. Shukwa'a, hate yawa'a, chil'ach ishik, tlaik, itch'a, haskach tulshat. So that first run, don't touch them. Right? So this is Tlingit, this Tlaqas, to mess with that first run. You let them go, and we'll get the ones after them. But when you close an open root, if it's EE, you can just throw something on there. So this is like you say yati to natich. So that CH closes that root. if it ends with an AA, it will switch to an EI. That's a tricky thing, and just remember that. So if you look up Hain in the verb dictionary, you're trying to find it. If you can't find it, look up ha, because ah goes to ain and to h. So that's where you see ya h. Ya ah is the name of a fish run. That's what you call Saak. Ya ah. That's the saying the hooligan run. So the other one that changes is the OO. So if it ends with oo and you close it, it will become wane. So that's why you say Chwasaku ya nachsakwain. I'm getting to know it. I'm starting to know it. And so these are just a couple of things, like the verb roots, when they're open, they just go through these little changes. So if you look up qoin and you don't see anything, look up qu, because then you'll find it.
Sheesh. That was rattling my brain right there when we passed it.
Yeah, so they do. They switch.
I always thought Tlingit meant like a Tlingit gonna cheesh, like a big thank you. But is it Tlingit many things? Or Tlingit gonna cheesh many things?
I would probably say many thanks, and then goodness cheesh plain would be a big thank you. They're kind of saying
Okay.
the same thing, but as far as like if you said Atlain Kate Aye Wuti, I would think there are a lot of dogs there. But if you said Kate Plain Aye Wuti, I would think Clifford the big red dog was living there.
Got it. Okay.
And then Atlain works for living things as well. But Shia Dehain tends to only work for living things. Although you'll see it used for metaphors and other stuff, which maybe is just being sort of kind of metaphorical language, but something to keep an eye on.
So it kind of goes the same for Xiao Deneki.
Yeah, so Xiawodeneki. So that one is an EI. So the EI and the EE, like Atya Awune is respect, right? So I could say, do ya, here, let me find this one. So I'll show you, that's a good one to look at. Let's see. So looking at these verbs, we'll go look for ne. So it's down here. So here's to respect someone. So you have en, ya, there's an built on, just like we talked about, that that's sometimes built onto a verb. And that means it's just always there, doesn't go away. Then you have the ya, which is that vertical surface. This one always has this letter U in it, which often, like, there's some sort of thing to think about here. This letter U has a linguistic name called the irialis. It's there to say it hasn't happened, or it's not really like that. So it pops up in a couple different ways, and it'll give you some things to think about. It's in all negative forms, all future forms of a verb. It pops up. And it means like the verb hasn't happened, or it's not really that kind of thing. So you have this ya combination, which we'll have to look at later. But here's the capital S for the subject. It's a zero classifier. It's ne, and it's a ga conjugation. So here's for the subject to respect the noun. So this tells you also what to change for what. So you could say, here's the perfective, du ya awuchane. So I could say, ya awuchane, I respect you. Ach ya ayawane, they respect me. So this is how you start changing the object and subject for this one. You're going to change who's being respected with a possessive pronoun. Ach, du, hast du, ha, ye. Okay? This, the there's another possessive pronoun, which we haven't done a whole lot with, but I know that you've used it, which means to the self. And this is when you say, shtu chal tu. I'm teaching it inside of myself. That's how you say studying. Chush is the long form of that, right? So I could say chush tu, and that means inside your own self. And whatever verb I say, that depends how polite I'm being. There's some impolite verbs that could come after that, chush tu. But if you say shya, a woodenechi, chush ya a woodene, respecting one's self. So that shya means to my own self. The classifier changes to plus D because I'm doing this to myself. Shya a woodenechi. That on the end pluralizes it. Self-respecting people. And so that's a really nice way to start a speech, saying honorable people. Shya woodenechi. The second one you could say is Anyat Kusani. Technically, the Anyat Kusani would be the high caste people of the land where you are. So here, those Anyat Kusani should be Wushkitan and Yachtetan people. If you go somewhere, and this is where you look at those clan lists, and if you're asked to give some sort of speech and it's in Tlingit, you look at the maps and you say, okay, here's the clans I have to address while I'm there. And they're usually the opposites. You start with the opposites first. And if you have some sort of direct tie to them, like this is your mother's, father's people, you say them first. And then you say the other ones. It's always safe to also say, and then you can also acknowledge if you see other clans that are there that you know and that you have a relationship with. I usually start with the ones who are ancestrally from a place. And then I might name some of the ones that I see that I feel like I need to acknowledge. And then I'll say, and all of you eagle people, my in-laws. Then you name the ravens who were there, usually just the ones who are ancestrally from that place, because you don't want to get up there and talk to yourself. So, good questions.
Sheesh, man, that one word really set it off.
Yeah, and so I think it's really fun to learn Tlingit this way. So we just do these little chunks. We start getting tired of memorizing a whole bunch of lists of stuff. But then when we go in the story, we'll see all these things, right? So just starting at the beginning, Yéil is with you all. Ktulnik, we are telling you the story, right? We're telling you this story. Ade is usually towards it. But remember I said we're going to talk about this yeh that sometimes pops up at the end of a verb. You see it several times in this story. Verby yeh, verby yeh, verby yeh. On its own, so that kaudzigiti yeh, that would mean, kaudzigit means to kind of fall into it or for something to happen. So kaudzigiti yeh would be the place where it happened. But if you put ade in front of the verb and then end with yeh, you're saying the way the verb happened. These are pretty important once you start getting into stories. If you're talking about, it was really neat the way that he was talking. It's really neat the way he's talking, or she's talking, they're talking. And then some of the other things that we've been looking at. This is kind of a compound, one of these bases. So this is a complicated base. So here you have waq, and then shiyik is kind of down below it. So waqshiyi, and then you can add a suffix on there, and that's referring to before the eyes of. So I could say, I'm going to show you this thing. That's how you would say it. Or you'd say something, and this is a really important concept in Tlingit because oftentimes waqshiyik is referring to like something happening in public, right? People are seeing it, it's happening. Yeah, and so that's why it says revealed. What else? Any other thoughts, questions? See what my dog was chewing on.
Did he use the short version of Gande?
He did. Like right after, but you're gonna. I don't quite understand. Like on its own, if you just said it, most people would interpret it. But then you go into the old stories, and then I think it's something that just naturally contracts. You know, because like let's look at the word like dock or dock. When you put day on it, it tends to just go short and high. Duck day. That's just something that happens. So I think gone, it just tends to naturally contract. So then as you're hearing Tlingit, you might be like, wait, somebody's pooping? But then you'll be like, oh, wait, no, it just happens. It happens, right? I didn't even mean to do that. You guys want to still look at the story? You want to go back to our lists of things? What do you want to do? Okay, well, I'll post this. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, could we practice reading little parts of it? Would that be appropriate?
Sure. Why don't you just read it like up until the end? So go until you see a period. I'll zoom in a little bit.
Oh, and I asked for it, didn't I?
Yep. Go ahead, kick us off. You get the nice.
Oh, man. Please forgive me for my mistakes.
Ḳutí.
Yayin kutasanik at haha tu yahashagun adeyu kaudzigidiye yaha wishyechi at you kutanik at adeyu kaudzigidiye.
Okay. Yeah, so just we'll keep an eye on, just watch for whether there's a W there. So this would be katushanik. And then the other thing is, this is something that happens. So this would be wushayech on its own. But once you put ha in front of it, it's going to collapse this w down to a single W. So we're going to say how shayechi at. So it becomes how. And this one for Teslin and car cross speakers would often become hum shayech. Okay, good cheesh. Any questions about that? Anything you want to look at?
I have a question. I've always wondered, because we make so many more modern adjustments because we're writing a language, in present time that wasn't written before. So how come we, like many times we collapse them together and when we're saying them, but we don't write them together to make it easier to say them when you're reading them?
That's a really good question. And there's still some back and forth on that. And so when we kind of, let's see, where was that one? So when we zoom in on this, we have ya. So this, or right here, right? In this case, it would kind of translate as this. How sheyech. So one of the arguments used to be like, should we write this as one word? Because it just kind of runs into it. And so the reason why the decision was made to write yi and ha and chat as their own words, and then if this was the thing that made you, it would be at, and it would be one word. So is one word, is written as one word, ha and yi and chat are all written as separate words. The reason for that is because if we look at, I'll probably have to do this on a document, I think. But this is a good question, right? Because as we learn it as a second language, which means we have to read it and write it, and that's so different than people who just grew up with it, and it's a situation that we just kind of have. But so one of the reasons, the logic behind these decisions. So we're looking at, these object pronouns. So we could, we say Ḥutí, and we say Háyake, and we say Iyake, written as one word, and we say Yíyake. Now it's back to two words, and we say Yake, and then we say Hasyake. So if we go from things being good to things not being not good, but for things to be bad, right? So this one I would say Klesh. Let me try and put this right there. So I would say Klesh Chat Ushke. So this is I'm bad, right? And then I would say, oops, I'll do this for Ellen. Hold on. So then I would say Klesh Ha Ushke. And this ha does not affect this ush. You still say ha ushke. There's a little break in there. But then you say klesh ishke. That they combine. Klesh ishke. And then same with this one. Klesh yi ushke. And then you'd say klesh ushke. And klesh has ushke. So that is the main reason why these chat and ha and yi are written separately. But they will, and so these are interesting things. So if we just went back to that same verb, you'd say chat wushayech, I was made, and you would say how sheyech. So it does affect that, but that's just the vowel ending, because you would also say, for example, let me just move this one down. So I would say, oh wait. If there was some, anyways, I'll get myself lost. But so there are some things, and that's usually why when we write this perfective marker, we write it like this. Because this is telling you, like, this is a sound that used to be in Tlingit, but one thing to remember about the perfective is it's pretty likely to contract just to a W or a Y. But this is sort of like, we can get into the weeds, like as learners of Tlingit, sometimes we're just memorizing these lists, sometimes we're listening to these stories, sometimes we think about how the language works, and then sometimes we got to really get in there to the, this causes this thing to do this, and when you add these three things together, you get that. Yeah, that's a great question. And there's been back and forth, like, so especially in the past 40 years, like a lot of discussion on how to write the language. And so people can see like how the verbs work and how the pronouns work. And really, once you start seeing this khat, ha, you should be like, oh, those are object pronouns. Now I know how to do that thing, right? So I was thinking about that today with the beginning Tlingit workbook and sort of getting back in there. And let me just start with this. Can somebody translate this, say this and translate it for me? Starting with this one.
Utlawe, that's their mother.
Yep. And this one.
Yake hat yigudi. It is good that you all have come.
Just one person.
Oh, that's the one. Thanks.
So this would be yi adi.
Yi adi, yi goody.
Okay. And how about this one?
Yake Ḥutí, it is good to see you.
This one.
Idachkan Ayachat. This is my grandchild.
Well, Ayachat.
This is your grandchild.
Dachkan Ayah.
Oh, I'm backwards.
Yep. I am your grandchild.
This grandchild, my bad.
So yeah, so we get the kinship term Idachkan, and then you could say this could be Awehu. They are your grandchild. But then you got the Ayachat, so that's I am. Okay, next one. Okay.
That was your mom.
Yeah, how was your mother? Yeah, away. Wasaya tihitla. Sheesh, kunakhawi. Lighten up the room. How about this one? There's one other way to say this one too, so maybe we haven't seen it said like this before.
Oop, I didn't even know my mic was on. My bad.
Now you gotta go for it.
I guess I'm it. Shoot. Dakwa nasawe ish. Dakwa. Well, you know, this one's got me confused. Dakwa. Well, what's the clan of your father?
Yeah, away.
Yeah.
Away.
Good job. I was gonna call my uncle's gun, but I forget. I didn't know I had my mic on.
Good job falling in the water. All right, next one.
Una itinach yati aksani. What's the name of your clan?
Well, so we got the una. What's the una?
I can't remember.
Okay, it's a rifle.
Oh, that's right, rifle.
And then we have itinach yati. So that on its own is they need it. Una itinach yati. They need a rifle, singular they.
Yeah.
Aksani, my uncle.
Oh, my uncle.
My uncle needs a rifle. How about this one?
Adu isayan ilaha. Whose turn is it?
So that's really close. But this would be ku'a. So this yan on its own is hunger.
Oh.
And this one is a really good example of like just noticing where the sa goes. It doesn't always go at the end. It goes right after what we're asking about. So adu eat sa. To whom yan uwaha did hunger arrive. That's literally what it means. But the translation is who is hungry.
Oh, okay.
Next one. Did everybody go? You can go again if you haven't. If you've gone already. We got 3 minutes. We're gonna make it through.
Kate, woody quetch.
Cake.
Okay, I just seen that and assumed it was dog.
Mm-hmm. It could be a dog, but then no, in this case it's a cake. So how do we translate that one?
My cake is tired.
Yeah.
Cake.
Duiti dishiyuhan dasawe cake.
Niece or nephew?
Yeah, away. So on the same moiety. My same moiety niece or nephew is tired.
Jeez.
Okay. Kananik. Now you gotta go the other way. How do you... Iishake or Iishakwe, which would really pull out the that part. Next one.
Gusuwe du tla.
That goose. So yeah, so gusu, and then the we, it doesn't need to be on there. That's usually like that, and then we're gonna change du to I. So gusu du tla would be where is their mother. Gusu itla, where is your mother?
Okay. Sheesh.
Who do you see? Well, these are fun ones. Got 1 minute left. Okay.
Adusa ichsanini.
Okay. So then we'll just pull the ch out of it because that's me saying.
Oh.
Dusa usitin, or adusa yisitin is what we should get. Yisitin.
Yisitin.
Yeah, and we haven't done a whole lot of that, like switching those subjects, but it's right on with the verb.
It wouldn't be Kształt though, huh?
No, so adusa ihlatin would be like, who you watching? So you're like,
okay.
but it could also be like, who are you caring for, right? So like, if you came over to visit and I had somebody's baby I was watching, or their dog or whatever, so that's where the hlatin. So yeah, those classifier switches as well. So chatin, I see a dog. Chwasatin, I see maybe my dog, some specific dog. Chatlatin, I am watching it, either like keeping an eye on it, or I am caring for it. Okay, so we'll finish these. Tuesday we're hosting an event, so just a reminder. So at 5:30, it's going to be live streamed, and we're going to have some guests who come to see us. We're trying to line up some Nastedi people. I had Ḳutí. I thought that was the clan of Roy Peratrovich, but it's Nastedi. So we're going to try and bring some folks in to visit with us. We're talking about Elizabeth Peratrovich Day, Qash'at, and we're talking about Black History Month. And we're also going to just sort of have a bit of a dialogue as well. So if you want to prepare anything to say, feel free, but you don't have to. There will be some other folks joining us, so it is a bit of a public event. But wasahatu nik akhkani awe hanakhugut. Qunni ayay awahi hawe waqui kwashisiko qach dashi ayay awahi. Shuknach ati ayak has awashi qach dashi. Ashu de ayah has awashi. Has to shaddahani. Qunni ke uik. Yande ya yanaitlak. Yande ya yanaitlak. Yeo achtuasaguyi ahi. Yende ya yanaitlak. Wan qanin slidzi ayah lingitch to dultu. Wasak kudzidain khayejine kunchish. So since there's a public event coming, just know I'm very proud of all of you, the way you're studying, the way you're working at it. A friend of mine, he passed away like a while back, and it was really unexpected. We were all very, very sad. He was Kagwantan. And at his Ḳutí, you know, at the beginning of a Ḳutí, people sing cry songs. And the Tlingit were singing their cry song, and as they were nearing the end of it, their leader, he began to yell, Yande ya yanaitlak, which is you're succeeding, you're almost there, you're right there. And it just made the hairs on my neck stand up. I was already emotional, you know. And so I went to talk to him, Ḳutí, afterwards, and I said, tell me about what you were saying, you know. I'd never heard that yelled over a cry song before. And he said, it's like we've just been paddling in this storm, and then we finally see the land. And so I just want you folks to hear it and just to know you're on your way. You're doing the thing. Even though sometimes I'm sure it feels frustrating and you feel like you're lost and you're out in the fog, but you're right there. So you go Juan Gulchish.
Sheesh. Oh,
Sheesh.
Sheesh.
Sheesh. And yeah, folks can always come and join us too if they want to. And then especially for Tuesday, but also just kind of any time. Like the link is right there for folks to use. I just usually let folks know we're not starting over if anybody comes to hang out with us, which is, everybody's welcome. But, if they want us to start doing sound practice, I'll say go to that other one, More the better. Got a cheesh.